Welcome, guys.
Cheers.
It's
wing night.
It's wing night tonight. And one of the things that we talked about we want to do every once a month is a wing night. And what wing night does is it just gets us to talk about whatever is on our heart, whatever is on our mind, what we're going through the week, whatever it's gonna. It takes a whole life of its own, and part of that is fun because it gives you an opportunity to realize how real we are, and sometimes we don't get things, and sometimes we work on things, and so.
And I like your hat.
Yeah, I like my hat too. It was free, so that's even better. I enjoy that kind of stuff. So I just enjoy that kind of stuff. I don't wear much hats.
No.
They have to have a certain feel, I think, and this is one of those that have a feel, and so we want to welcome you to our broadcast here. We're coming to you live from the Estevan Church of God in our studios. My name is Geoff.
I'm Helen.
And we are coming to you live, as I said. I don't even pay attention to what I'm saying.
I know.
So.
That's because we're winging it.
That's right. We're winging it. No notes, no nothing.
No notes.
If there's something you want to hear, if you have a question, we can see on the screen some of the things you have, and feel free. I know most of you watch this after the broadcast is over, and we just live in that kind of an on-demand when it works. And that's why we have our YouTube channel, because we believe it's important for us to fill our minds with wholesome stuff that not only challenge us but give us hope. And so our YouTube channel is Estevan Church of God. Click on the YouTube channel, Estevan Church of God, and you can see, click on our icon, and you can see the playlist we have, because all of what we do here, it gets put on there once they've become a live stream. Not only that, but we have our morning services on it too, the teaching and things like that we do. And so if you haven't known before, we're very relaxed in our services. We believe in hope and life, and we want to talk about purpose and how we can enjoy and make the most of what God's given us, because we've talked about that many times.
And we are totally about giving hope in real day life. And you know what? I felt like I needed a little bit of that input this week. Let's be real here. My week was, wow.
Yeah.
It was like, it was a full week of stuff. And man, when stuff feels like it gets thrown at you from all angles, it's like, now I gotta actually walk through this. Like sometimes
it's easy for us to sit here and talk about stuff and interact with our audience, people that are listening to us, but it's a whole nother game when we have to walk the walk ourselves. And I agree, sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes you feel like just punching somebody in the face, and it would just get it over with. And
I love it. I love it when I work through something, and then these are talks where I want to give you hope, and you just want to speak life, and I'm such a positive person, and I am. I really am. I choose to see sunshine every morning.
Yeah, you do.
I do. It's just a part of who I am, I guess, huh? I'm all sunshine and roses. But this week was a hard week for me. To be honest, it played a lot on my mental well-being. Like, it played a lot of stuff.
I think that's what events of life do. And if we're not equipped to use tools in order for us to get the most of life, and there's times too, I don't like getting up in the morning and going to work. I just don't feel like going to work. Sometimes I just don't want to do nothing. And yet there's things going on that demand your time, demand your energy, and you got to make decisions, and you got to work through stuff, and that's what I like so much about what our talks are, is we deal with life stuff. It's important for us to understand it's normal to struggle. It's normal to not know sometimes the answers to things. Sometimes it's normal to realize that you're at the end of yourself. Sometimes it's normal to not have the answer.
But it sucks.
Oh, it does sometimes, absolutely. And that's why I struggle with people that think there's a rose around every bush, because it's like, my first thought is, what are you hiding? What are you hiding,
Yeah.
Oh, life is good, life is great, this is wonderful, this is wonderful. But deep down inside, how much of that is a cover-up? Because let's be real. Life isn't like that all the time. You just mentioned here that you like to see the positive and everything. And
I do.
I generally like to see the positive and stuff too, but sometimes I just want to let it all buck and who cares?
Yes. And you know what? This week I was really had to deal with overwhelming anxiety when I felt like it came crashing in on me. Because it did. And I felt very overwhelmed for a while. And sometimes I really hold it in really good. Like I'm not like you where I'm just like let her loose. But
we're all different, right?
We're all different, but I process on the inside. And I felt that. I felt so much emotions that I had to deal with. But it got me to a place where what I struggle with the most is when you have to wait. When you have to wait for an answer. When you have to wait and you don't know.
Yeah, waiting is never a good recipe for anything.
Yeah.
It is, but I'm just being honest. Sometimes waiting is not fun.
It's a hard place to be.
Because I'm a person that likes to see movement. I'm a person that likes to see things happen. And so I bring that in whatever I do. And sometimes that's a positive thing, and sometimes it's not such a positive thing. And that's why we have to learn. I think that's why it's so important. We have to learn wisdom. Wisdom doesn't react to things always the same, but assesses. And sometimes I think our accessibility, if I can use that word, needs to be challenged because we have to learn. We've been saying this all through our table talk, and sometimes I feel like a broken record, but it's so true. We've got to learn to navigate. And if we can't navigate through life, then we're going to spend most of our time with our hood up, our wheels off the vehicle, and the check engine light's always on. And I don't know, but sometimes I get so frustrated with that concept that we always have negative stuff. You turn on the news, what do you see? Negative. And so I've learned, one of the things that we've talked about many times about the news and all the information that comes to us, I've learned to start blocking more things on my Facebook feeds and unfollow more than I've ever have before because sometimes I'm just tired of all the negativity and you know when you and it's not good for me.
You know what though, honey? Sometimes there are things that we need to unfollow because it will just feed your anxiety, it will feed your despair. Stop it.
It almost feels like especially with the circumstances we're going through, it feels like a plague, you know, like leprosy or something that is going to kill you when it's not in its generality. And so when we overreact and when we panic and when we fear monger and throw all these out the window, I mean, it just sucks everything out. And one of the things that I find helps me is I have to be careful what I allow inside because when I allow all these things to filter into my system, sometimes it's an information overload and that's with everyday kinds of life. It's dealing with stress at work. It's dealing with, you know, decisions we make. You know, when I'm not in a good state of mind, I can sit there. I like watching hockey and I was disappointed this year because there's no fans and, you know, just the whole world is really stopped and we're trying to, you know, readjust. And it sucks. I'm not happy about it. I think, you know, do I have the answers? No, I don't. I just think it sucks. And I think we've overreacted for the most part. But I have to understand it being safe and all that kind of stuff. But when you turn on the TV and there's no fans and you turn on UFC and there's no fans and all these other things, it's just like, why bother? You know, and that's why it's important, I think, to have the right filters going in because when you have so much of that happening, you begin to see it everywhere else because your mindset is already built.
It's like that lens comes down.
It's almost like
you just see.
It's used to getting that certain kind of information, and so we see it everywhere we go. And sometimes I've had to learn to stop in my tracks and take a step back and reassess because today was one of those days. Something happened last night that really set me off and it seemed like I couldn't get my bearings. And I don't like that feeling when you can't get your bearings. It seems no matter what you do, it's not quite good enough, or it just falls short, or you leave this empty, and it seems like you just got everything is wanting your attention because you haven't followed through on anything, and sometimes you just want to throw in the towel and say enough already.
Yeah.
But you have to go back to see what's going on the filter. And it brings me back to Scripture, because the Bible talks about, as a person thinks, so is he. And that was way back in the Old Testament. But the concept there, I think, is really resonates to, as a person thinks, so is he, or is she. How we think really creates the platform of how life unfolds. And so when we get up in the morning, like I do sometimes, and my thinking is not right, my whole day is set by that, because it becomes my bearing. And so when the Bible tells us, as a man thinks, it's not a condemnation, it's not a reprimand, it's simply bringing to light a truth that can change.
Absolutely.
For too long, I've struggled way too much in my life, because I've just allowed what's going on in my head and how my filters are working to determine how I produce and what I do. And that goes down to our parenting days when our kids were still around.
Yeah.
It goes to the jobs I had, the things I'd done.
Yeah.
All that stuff works through that filter. And sometimes if we're not careful, we begin to make great assumptions that this is normal life, and it's not. It has to do with our thinking. And I think you and I have talked about this a lot of times too, that when we don't take the time to pay attention to what's going around us so that we can adjust, adjusting is huge.
It's huge, because that's actually what happened to me this week. It was in that place where I did feel really overwhelmed with anxiety, and I had no control, and I had to wait and all that. I sat down and I began to be honest with myself. And I had to ask myself some questions. Why am I feeling anxious? Why? What's going on inside of me? That was huge. Because I began to pinpoint, and then I could begin to let go of those things. Because I didn't even know why. Why is this feeling like such a huge deal? And in the middle of it, I was hearing other people's stories, and there was a lot of people walking through a lot of stuff this week. But honey, when I changed my filter, and it was through something I read, and I began to feel peace, even though nothing had changed. I still had to wait. I still didn't have an answer. But I had peace. All of a sudden, the tension was gone. I felt like I didn't have to. There was no worry. I'm like, okay, so how do we get
I think
there?
It's important to answer that, because I think many of us are at that spot, and I think if we don't realize we're at that spot, we tend to dig ourselves a bigger hole. And part of, I think, asking the right questions. I mean, we're two individuals. We come from different backgrounds, and we've learned different things. We just even had different theological positions on a lot of stuff, and how we navigated through that in our relationship, and how we related to that with our kids. We haven't done everything right.
Wow.
And
no,
we need to say that sometimes we don't do things right.
Yeah.
But you know what? So what? We've got to learn to make adjustments.
Yes.
I don't like when people are harping on people that they have to perform a certain way because they live based on someone else's standard. And that's what I like about Jesus. He wasn't like that. He took us for who we were, our personalities, our desires, our love, you know, and that's what makes us uniquely us.
Yes.
I'm a person, my favorite color is green. I like green.
Wow.
I like green, not because of the forest or anything. I just liked green. And that's one of the things I enjoyed. And the next person can say, well, green's a horrible color.
Yeah.
Like, what are you thinking?
Yes, purple is mine.
But if we begin to celebrate our differences, not as threats, or view our process or adjusting as not as threats, but as opportunities to grow or to understand. The biggest thing, I think, when we end up in conflict is we don't understand. We don't understand a position, and so instead of listening to their story, instead of listening to their position and why they've come up to where they have or why they think the way, we're afraid to ask questions.
Yes.
We just assume, and we assume when we see bits and pieces of facts, and based on those bits and pieces of facts, we come up with a conclusion. And I think that's where often we make the biggest mistake is we come to conclusions when we see somebody doing something or working through something, when I don't see Jesus ever doing that. And I think that's one of the things when I encountered the real Jesus, I like to say that because we grew up with a Jesus, but it painted a very doom and gloom and you better match up or else type mentality, and that's just simply not true.
Yeah.
And that's what I like about Jesus. He walks us through that aspect, and we learn as we go, and those adjustments. I don't feel like sound like a broken record, but
no. You know what? Like, I'm just thinking of the storm, because it felt like a bleep storm this week. That's just how it felt.
Yeah.
And it felt like, oh my goodness, how are we going to get to the other side? Even though if I would tell people what I walked through this week, they were like, that was a storm for you? Like, big deal. But you know what? Jesus was walking on the storm, and I just think of this when the disciples, they were all terrified in the storm, thinking they were very overwhelmed. Here Jesus is walking on the water in the storm, and then only one guy says, if that's you, can I come walk on the water with you? He's like, you bet, come on out. Yeah. He didn't reprimand the others. He didn't say, guys, like, what's your problem? Why aren't you stepping out? Why are you freaking out? I'm right here.
Yeah, that's right.
He didn't do that.
Right.
Peter steps out and he does walk on water, but then he gets afraid again and he sinks. Jesus still didn't
reprimand him and
let him drown, have a few gulps, maybe you'll learn, like, I'm here. He doesn't do that. I never felt.
Well, why do you think adjusting is so difficult? Why do you think most of us struggle with adjustments? Why is that? Why do you think some of us, or most of us, a lot of us, struggle with making adjustments?
Yeah. You know what? For a lot of times when I felt so full of anxiety, I didn't even know that I could let it, like, there was another way. Like, I didn't have to live with it. I just thought if it comes and you just felt it, all your emotions are tied up in it. We had no tools. I didn't understand how.
I think the biggest thing is we may not understand that there's tools, but the biggest thing I think is we've accepted this as our life.
True.
And when we've accepted as our life, then we don't aim for anything else. We just live for it.
Yeah. I'm just an anxious person.
I just deal with things that way, so get over it. It's like, no, that's the way that you've been choosing to deal with it, but there's an opportunity to change that.
Yes, there is.
And I think that's what I want to emphasize is we have the ability to navigate.
Yeah.
We have the ability to make choices in how we live our life. Yeah. What bothers me sometimes, and I've been there many times because I've wrestled it through, it's just so much easier to blame other people for my problems when I'm not taking responsibility for my own. Yeah. And so if I want to change, then I need to take responsibility for that change, nobody else.
I know we've said it, but it is so huge, even for in our lives.
Yes.
Take responsibility for my own growth.
And it's not about making excuses of why we do what we do. It's not about covering up why we do what we do. We do what we do because there's something going on inside that we feel that's the past. So the question, again, I asked was, why is it so difficult to navigate? I like what we just mentioned here because it's become a custom. This is just the way I am. Mm-hmm. But that's not true, because if that were true, then whatever we're born with, that's it.
That's it.
You got to live with it. If you're a negative person, you got to live with it. If you're a positive person, you got to live with it. If you're always attracting bad things, you have to live with it. But you don't. And that's the same with addiction. Yep. It's the same with compulsiveness. The same thing with negativity. All those stuff, and that's what makes journeying both exciting and both difficult at the same time. Is because we have the ability, with God's help, to shape our future.
Yes.
Save our now, shape our now, and shape our future. And so when we struggle with our kids and not knowing how to parent properly, and so we fumbled away through some of these things, and we learned as they got older, and we made adjustments, and sometimes we can live in that discouragement, and sometimes people go through this is a hell life trying to figure out who they are and how they can change, but when they don't recognize they can,
That's right.
It's not about sitting in the couch and watching Dr. Phil and finding all the answers. It's about allowing the information we get to get inside of us.
Yes.
And that's why it's so important. And growing up in the church, it was read the Bible, pray, read the Bible, pray, read the Bible, pray, read the Bible, pray. But there again, if that doesn't come alive to you, there's no adjusting that happens. And so the emphasis isn't read and pray. The emphasis needs to be encounter. Encounter God, encounter our experiences, encounter the positive things that are happening in life, encounter them, because when I see encountering, I become a part of it.
Yes.
So that goes with addiction, that goes with making mistakes as parents, that goes to, making mistakes at work, not getting along with people, family-related stresses and relationship stuff. We've got to learn, and we've navigated, we're still navigating through that, because we're still in the process of learning and developing and growing. And as a result of that, we making adjustments all the time. And what bugs the daylights out of me is when you got people that think they've arrived and they have no more learning to grow. They've got the package, and I just want to throw a grenade in there and just see them blow it up.
Yeah.
I don't like predictability, because then we assume.
It's true.
By doing these certain things, we'll get this kind of results.
Yeah.
And the reality of it is, some of it's true.
Yeah.
If I put money in the bank and I leave it there, it draws interest. I get more money. Yeah. It may be very little, but that principle is true. And so we learn in life that if we do certain things, we get certain things. And to us, it becomes predictable. We got to, and then it becomes a system. Yeah. And then when that system lets us down, we want to throw the whole thing away. Yeah. And it's not about learning the system. It's about navigating through things and learning to adjust along the way. And it is simple, but yet it is hard, because
it like you said, that first verse, as a man thinks in his heart.
Thinks is an active reaction and response.
Yes.
Thinks.
Because you're believing it. It's what you see, it's what you believe, and that's actually going to be how you live. It's just an overflow. But you know what? That's the life. If you stay boxed into how you see things, you will stop growing. Yeah. That challenge is going to put you down. That anxiety is just going to... But when you learn, I can see differently. I can encounter to create a new belief in my heart.
I like that word encounter, because it involves me.
Yep.
Encountering involves me. I can be given information and rules and a system, but unless I encounter, it doesn't change anything. And so that's part of the cycle of struggle, part of the cycle of addiction, part of the struggle of changing our perspective. It's part of the struggle, because we want it to happen without effort, and nothing valuable will come without effort. I have to become sick and tired of my situation I'm in, that I'm willing to step out of what is always happening around me and start creating a new path. Yeah. And so I need to put myself in a situation where I can encounter new things.
Yes.
Because it's the encountering, it's the encounter that changes it. And too often we just settle for what we see. Yeah. Too often we settle for what we know. Yeah. Too often we just settle with whatever life throws at us. Yeah. And I want to learn.
Is a new path.
There is.
To find. Yes, there is.
There is new paths, and that's how we've encouraged our kids as they've grown older. you have the power of choice. Well, I don't really have choice. I can't help it. Yes, we can help it. Yeah. We have to learn to think different because, and that's what the week that you've had and the and the months that I've had. Sometimes I feel like I've dragged through stuff a lot more than what I needed to, and so I wrestled with that. And sometimes I'm just tired of wrestling. I just want to step out, and in order for me to step out, it brings unfamiliarness. Yes. It brings risk. It brings all that stuff. Yeah. But if we want to create new patterns, then those things have to change in our life. And that's where faith comes in. Yes. That's where our relationship with God comes in, because He helps us navigate in that position. Yep. I don't know how to pray sometimes. Yep. But He helps me in how to target how I pray. Sometimes I don't know how to communicate things right, and sometimes I'm just off. He helps me in that aspect because He believes in us enough that we are able to navigate. Yeah. Yes. We're able to navigate. Yeah. This thing isn't set in stone. Yeah.
That's powerful.
And it's not a system where you plug this in, you get that out. Because if it were a system, it would have nothing to do with relationship.
Yes.
Relationship is not a system.
No, it isn't.
And when we make relationship a system, then we just have a contract.
Yeah.
If we made our relationship just a system, we would just have an understanding and a contract. Yeah. There'd be no life, no love. There'd be no passion. There'd be nothing surrounding that, because all it is you do this, I'll do this.
No freshness.
You do this, I do this. Yeah. You do this, I do. And that's the thing I want to tell our listeners, that's where faith in Jesus can come completely alive, because it isn't, I'll do this, you do this.
That's dead. That's stagnant.
That's a contract.
No life. Yes.
It's not about a contract. It's about an encounter. And relationships are always growing entities.
Yep.
A system never grows. A system just presents a package, and you work within that package. And I'm so glad God is out of the box package person.
That's awesome.
We can get overwhelmed by what's around us. We can get overwhelmed by the things that we're facing. We can get overwhelmed with the unknowns. There's people that are afraid of, they're not know what they're afraid of, and they're afraid because the filters have, and that's where I didn't get to the point of being afraid. I got to the point of exhaustion and frustration. And I don't like being at the point of exhaustion and frustration, because that doesn't bring me in a good place. Yeah. And I have to recognize those signs, and then I have to learn to step back and make adjustments. Yeah. And sometimes, I'll be honest with you, I don't like making adjustments. I just want to be done with everything. Yeah. But if I value myself and the people around me, I'm going to constantly make adjustments. And so it's not about a system. Yeah. It's about a relationship. Yeah. It's about real. Yeah. It's about navigating through the tough times. It's about accepting when I don't have the answer.
That's huge.
But I'm not willing to stay there either, so that I'll keep finding it. Because I value myself enough. And so we want you to feel secure. We want you to feel encouraged. Because there's another verse in the Bible that I hang on to many times. It's, if God is for you, who can be against you? Yes. And so I want my life to be an overflow of my relationship with Him. Yes. And so if that's alive, then what flows out of me is alive as well. And so I don't see endless impossibilities. Yes. I see open possibilities.
That's exactly
when I look at it from that angle. And so I don't know what else to say.
And I had to do that this week. I had to grab onto something that Jesus says, and He says, peace I leave you, a gift. My peace I give you. It's not like the world gives. It's not fragile. It's not shaken. And He says, don't let your heart
I like you said fragile, because if your peace can be broken like that, it's not very secure.
And that word peace really is powerful. It's got a safety to it. It's got such a state of, I know He's got it.
Yes.
And it's a gift. So I said, I don't have to work for this peace.
That's right.
It's mine. And so that's what I held on to this week. And it actually, I felt it. And it broke through all of that anxiety. It was.
So we just want to say thank you for joining us.
Yes.
Again, most of you probably watch us later on.
Yeah.
And you can connect us on YouTube after. Got a lot of other stuff there. But you know what? We just want you to know that you're important enough, you're valuable enough to have hope, freedom, and joy. And don't settle for anything less.
Yeah.
God created you the way you has because he wants to take you on a journey where he can come alongside you to navigate through the events of life. I don't believe the chapter is closing. I think a new chapter is beginning.
Yes.
And I want you, your family, the people that are most important to you, this city, this province, to understand that the horizon is yet to open up.
That's right.
And
That's right.
We have tools.
Yeah.
So that we can navigate through life.
Because the sun always comes up after the night.
Yes.
Right? It's just
I'm
it's
about
going
ready
to
for the
happen.
sun.
Yes.
I'm about ready for the sun. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for joining us
We
tonight.
just appreciate you so much. And we'll talk to you next
hope
Wednesday.
You have a great week. We'll see you next Wednesday.
You betcha. Bye-bye.